You ever find yourself driving through nowhere at 2 a.m., where even the GPS seems to shrug and lose signal? That's where I was. A stretch of interstate cutting through a sea of black. No towns, no gas stations, just an endless ribbon of asphalt. I'd been on the road for hours, chasing some last-minute work gig in the next state. Fatigue crept in like a dull, nagging ache. So when I spotted the battered neon sign reading, "Vacancy Willow Creek Motel," I pulled in without a second thought. The building was a relic from the 60s. Peeling paint, flickering lights, and an air of abandonment. But the lot had cars, so I figured, how bad could it be? The lobby smelled like mildew and regret. Behind the counter stood a man whose smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Room for the night?" he rasped. "Yeah, just one," I said, trying to ignore the feeling that I'd walked into a trap. He slid a rusty key across the counter. "Room 6. As I left, I caught him staring. Not at me, but past me, like something over my shoulder had caught his attention. When I turned, there was nothing there. The room was basic. Queen bed, buzzing TV, and a bathroom that had seen better decades. Exhaustion beat paranoia, and I collapsed onto the creaky mattress. Sleep didn't come easy, though. The walls were paper-thin, and from the room next door came the muffled sound of humming. A woman's voice, soft and slow, rising and falling in a tune that felt ancient, haunting. I told myself it was nothing, just another late-night traveler keeping herself entertained. But then came the whispering. It wasn't in English, hell, I'm not even sure it was a language. Low, guttural murmurs that seemed to seep through the walls, circling the room like a predator. My skin prickled, every nerve screaming that I wasn't alone. When I finally mustered the courage to move, I grabbed my phone to call the front desk. No signal, of course. A heavy knock shattered the silence. "Who's there?" I croaked, my voice barely above a whisper. No answer. Another knock, heavier this time, like someone using their whole body to shake the door. Heart pounding, I edged toward the peephole. Outside stood a man, backlit by the faint glow of the parking lot lights. His face was wrong, too pale, lips stretched into a grotesque grin. He didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stared. Then he started humming, the same eerie tune I'd heard earlier. I backed away, grabbing the only weapon I had, the ancient brass lamp from the nightstand. The humming stopped. The door creaked open. I swear I'd locked it, but there it was, swinging inward, revealing an empty threshold. No man, no pale face, just darkness spilling in like a suffocating tide. I slammed the door shut and dragged the dresser in front of it. My mind raced. Should I run? Drive off into the void? Or stay put and wait for morning? Then the TV turned on. It flickered to life, displaying static at first, then shifting to an old black and white feed of the motel parking lot. It was live. I could see my car, the flickering neon sign, and the man. He was there, standing in the middle of the lot, staring up at the camera. And then he turned, slowly, and pointed at room 6. The screen cut to black. I didn't wait. Grabbing my keys, I bolted for the door, ready to make a run for my car. But as I pulled the dresser aside, a chill washed over me. Footsteps. They weren't coming from the parking lot. They were inside. Slow, deliberate, moving down the hall toward my room. I yanked the door open and ran. The hallway seemed endless, its dim light flickering like a heartbeat. Behind me, the footsteps quickened, a second pair joining in, then a third, and a fourth. The exit loomed ahead, salvation glowing through the glass doors. I burst outside into the cold night air, lungs burning, heart threatening to explode. The parking lot was empty. The man was gone, but the cars weren't empty. In each one, I saw them. Figures slumped in the driver's seats, faces pale and eyes wide with terror. Their hands gripped the steering wheels, knuckles bone white, as if they'd been frozen mid-scream. I jumped into my car and floored it, not caring where the road led as long as it was away from that place. When I finally stopped, hours later, I checked the rearview mirror, and there he was, sitting in the back seat, grinning. So yeah, don't stop at roadside motels. Ever. I slammed on the brakes, swerving to the shoulder of the highway. My heart raced as I spun around, ready to confront whoever, or whatever, was in the back seat. Empty. No one was there. Just my duffel bag and a pile of fast food wrappers. I sat there, hands trembling on the wheel, trying to convince myself I was losing it. The lack of sleep, the stress, it was getting to me. But as I stared at the darkened stretch of highway ahead, something gnawed at me. I'd seen him. I hadn't imagined that grin, that pale face, those dead eyes boring into me from the rearview mirror. The car felt suffocating, like the air itself was charged with some invisible static. I needed to move, fast. I drove for what felt like hours, though the clock insisted it was only minutes. The highway stretched endlessly, flanked by dense forests that swallowed the headlights. No exits, no signs of life. Just when I thought I might be trapped in some looping nightmare, I saw it. A faint glow in the distance. A gas station. Relief flooded me as I pulled into the lot. The place was old, its faded sign creaking in the wind, but it was a beacon of normalcy. I parked, got out, and breathed in the cold night air. The station was empty. No attendant, no other cars, just the dull hum of a flickering fluorescent light above the pumps. I stepped inside the store, the bell above the door jangling faintly. "Hello," I called out. No answer. The place was a time capsule. Shelves stocked with dusty cans, expired snacks, and a faded map of the area pinned to the wall. I grabbed a bottle of water and approached the counter, hoping to find someone to pay. That's when I noticed it. A small TV behind the register, its screen showing a grainy black and white feed of the parking lot outside. My car sat in the center of the frame, and standing beside it, barely visible in the shadows, was him. My blood ran cold. He wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at the camera. At me. The lights in the store flickered, and the TV feed cut out. I spun around, half expecting him to be right there, but the store was empty. The silence pressed in, broken only by the faint buzz of the fluorescents. I ran to the window, peering out at the lot. The man was gone, but so was my car. Panic set in as I stumbled back, my mind racing. Did he take it? Was this some twisted game? I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call for help, but the screen was dead. No service. Then I heard it. A faint hum, the same haunting tune from the motel. It was coming from outside. I edged toward the door, every instinct screaming at me to stay put. But I had to know. Slowly, I pushed it open and stepped into the night. The hum grew louder, swirling around me like a living thing. I turned in every direction, searching for the source, but the lot was empty. And then I saw it. In the distance, just beyond the gas station's flickering lights, stood a figure. It wasn't the man. It was me, or something that looked like me. It mimicked my posture, my movements, even the way I clutched the bottle of water. But its face, it was wrong. The eyes were too wide, the smile too sharp, stretched into something that barely resembled human. It raised a hand, mimicking the way I'd reached for the door just moments ago. I froze, unable to breathe, as it slowly stepped closer. Behind me, the bell above the door jingled. I turned, expecting to see another customer, maybe even the attendant finally showing up. Instead, I saw myself walk in. This one was different. Its face was blank, featureless, a smooth expanse of skin where eyes and a mouth should have been. The first doppelganger outside began to laugh, a hollow, distorted sound that echoed through the lot. The one inside tilted its head, as if curious, before taking a step toward me. I stumbled back, my legs barely cooperating as I turned and ran into the darkness. The forest swallowed me whole. Branches clawed at my skin. Roots threatened to trip me with every step, but I didn't stop. The laughter followed, growing louder, closer, until it felt like it was inside my head. When I finally burst into a clearing, I collapsed, gasping for air. The silence was deafening, the absence of pursuit almost more terrifying than the chase itself. I looked up, and my heart sank. There, in the middle of the clearing, was the Willow Creek Motel. The neon sign buzzed faintly, casting an eerie glow over the cracked pavement. I'm still here. I don't know how long it's been, hours, days? The clocks don't work, and every attempt to leave brings me back to this cursed place. Room 6 is waiting. The door is open now, its dark interior beckoning. I can hear the humming again, growing louder. It's not coming from the motel anymore. It's coming from me. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the open door to room 6. Every rational part of me screamed to stay away, but something deeper, something primal, was drawing me in. The humming vibrated in my chest now, a sound that wasn't just audible but alive, threading itself into my bones. I stood up, legs shaking, and stepped toward the room. My body moved on autopilot, my mind screaming at it to stop. As I crossed the threshold, the air grew heavier, thick with an energy that made every breath a struggle. The room looked the same: dingy walls, buzzing TV, threadbare carpet, but something was off. The shadows were too deep, stretching unnaturally toward the corners. The buzzing from the TV wasn't static anymore. It was whispering. The screen showed the parking lot again, but it wasn't empty. Figures shuffled in and out of the frame, their movements jerky and unnatural, like marionettes on tangled strings. I squinted, trying to make sense of the distorted shapes. Then the camera panned, and my stomach dropped. It was me. Not just one of me, there were dozens. Hundreds. They filled the screen, all moving in unison, their faces twisted into grotesque parodies of my own. The whispers grew louder, words I couldn't understand layering over one another in a chaotic symphony. I backed away, only to stumble over something on the floor. A mirror. It was an old, tarnished thing, its frame ornate but warped, like it had been melted and reshaped. I stared at my reflection, and my reflection stared back. Then it blinked. I didn't. Before I could react, it reached out, pressing its hand against the glass. The surface rippled like water, and I felt a cold, wet sensation on my own hand. "Let me in," it said, its voice layered and wrong, like multiple people speaking at once. I scrambled back, my head spinning. The reflection didn't follow. It just stood there, watching, its grin widening until it stretched ear to ear. The room shifted around me, the walls twisting and stretching like a living thing. The door slammed shut, the sound reverberating through the air like a gunshot. And then I wasn't alone. Figures emerged from the walls, their forms hazy and indistinct, like shadows made flesh. They moved closer, circling me, their whispers merging into a deafening roar. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the room, disappearing into the void. The shadows lunged, and everything went black. When I woke up, I was outside, lying on the cold asphalt of the motel parking lot. My car was there, engine idling, headlights cutting through the darkness. The motel was gone. In its place was an empty field, overgrown with weeds and littered with debris. I stumbled to my feet, my body aching like I'd been hit by a truck. The humming was gone, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed down on me like a physical weight. I didn't question it. I got in the car and drove, not caring where I was going as long as it was far, far away. It's been weeks now, and I haven't been able to shake what happened. Every time I look in the mirror, I see something off. The reflection doesn't always move the way I do. And at night, when the house is quiet, I hear it. The humming. It's faint, almost imperceptible, but it's there. I don't think I ever left that motel. Not really, because every night, when I close my eyes, I'm back in room 6. And I don't think I'll ever leave. I've stopped sleeping. Every time I try, I wake up in that room. The details are sharper now, more vivid. The flickering TV, the mirror on the floor, the whispers. They've become clearer, louder. The worst part? I don't think it's a dream. Last night, when I woke up in room 6, there was someone else there. They were sitting on the edge of the bed, back turned to me, their silhouette illuminated by the glow of the TV. I froze, every instinct telling me to stay still, to stay silent. But the figure tilted its head, as if it heard my thoughts. "You can't keep running," it said. The voice was mine. I jolted awake, this time for real, in my bed, drenched in sweat. But something was different. The air in my room felt wrong, heavy and stale, like the motel. I looked at my bedside table, and my stomach flipped. The tarnished mirror from room 6 was there, leaning against my lamp. I didn't touch it, couldn't. I shoved it under the bed and tried to convince myself it wasn't real, that I'd imagined it, or worse, that someone had broken into my house as some sick prank. But the scratches on my bedroom floor, the faint humming I could now hear in my walls, none of it felt like a prank. I went to work the next day, trying to lose myself in the monotony of spreadsheets and emails. But it followed me, the reflection. Every time I passed a window, a shiny surface, even a puddle, I'd catch glimpses of it, my reflection, just a second too slow, watching me. By the time I got home, I was shaking. My front door was ajar. I should have called the police, but something inside me already knew it was pointless. The mirror was back on my bedside table, and this time it wasn't empty. The glass shimmered, a swirling, black void that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. And inside, I saw them. The figures from the motel, their twisted faces pressed against the glass, clawing, desperate. And behind them, the man, that grin. He raised a hand, pressing it to the glass like before. The surface rippled, and I stumbled back, feeling an icy hand brush against my arm. "You let us in," he whispered. I ran out of my house, into my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going, just that I couldn't stay there. The humming grew louder as I sped down the highway, my headlights slicing through the night. But the road, it wasn't normal. The farther I drove, the darker it became, the asphalt warping, the trees twisting into impossible shapes. I realized too late that the signs were all the same. Willow Creek Motel, 2 miles ahead. I slammed on the brakes, the car screeching to a stop. But when I looked around, the motel wasn't 2 miles away. It was right in front of me. The neon sign buzzed, casting its sickly glow over the parking lot. My car was there again, sitting exactly where I'd left it the first night. Room SIX's door was open. I didn't want to go in, but my feet moved on their own, carrying me toward the room as the humming filled my ears, louder and louder until it drowned out my thoughts. Inside, the mirror was waiting. The figures moved closer, their distorted faces pressing against the glass. The man stepped forward, his grin impossibly wide. "This is where you belong," he said, his voice reverberating through the room. I shook my head, backing away, but my reflection stepped out of the mirror. It was me, but it wasn't. Its movements were stiff, mechanical, its eyes filled with the same void as the man's. It reached for me, its cold fingers closing around my wrist. "Let go!" I screamed, but it pulled me closer, its face inches from mine. "You can't escape," it whispered. "You're one of us now." The last thing I remember is the mirror shattering, the sound echoing through my skull as I fell into darkness. When I woke up, I was in my car, parked in front of my house. The mirror was gone, and the motel, it's like it never existed. But every now and then, I catch a glimpse of it in the distance, on lonely highways, in the reflection of a shop window. And sometimes late at night when I look in the mirror, my reflection doesn't blink. If you ever see the Willow Creek Motel, do yourself a favor. Keep driving. Don't stop, because if you do, you won't ever really leave. I've tried everything to move on. Therapy, leaving town, even burning my own reflection, breaking every mirror in my house like a lunatic. But none of it works. The motel still finds me. I changed jobs, cut off friends, stopped driving altogether. But it doesn't matter. It's in the places where no one's watching. Dark alleys, quiet moments, the seconds before sleep when you're at your most vulnerable. It's waiting. The other night, I thought I was finally free. I hadn't seen it, heard it, or felt that suffocating weight in weeks. For the first time, I let myself believe it was over. That's when the humming came back. This time, it wasn't faint. It wasn't creeping through walls or whispering from the edges of my mind. It was loud. It started in my living room, a single vibrating note, shaking the air like a pressure wave. Then it spread, filling the house, pressing against my chest like a vice. I grabbed my phone, fumbling to call someone, anyone, but the screen flickered and died in my hands. The lights went out next, and then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, impossibly loud against the silence. They started in the hallway, moving toward my bedroom door. I backed away, grabbing the only weapon I could find, a fireplace poker I'd kept since the first night this all began. My hands trembled as the door creaked open. There was no one there, but the humming. It was inside me now, vibrating through my skull, drowning out every rational thought. And when I turned around, I saw it. The mirror was back. It hung on the wall where my TV used to be, its tarnished frame gleaming in the darkness. The glass shimmered, showing not my reflection, but the motel parking lot. Room 6's door stood open, waiting. I don't know why, but I stepped closer. The poker fell from my hands, clattering to the floor as the room seemed to stretch, pulling me toward the mirror. And then I was through. I found myself standing in the parking lot, the night air thick and suffocating. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting the lot in a sickly glow. This time, there were no other cars, just mine. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a deafening silence that pressed against my ears. I turned toward room 6, and there he was, the man. His grin stretched impossibly wide, his pale face glowing faintly in the neon light. "You're late," he said, his voice echoing like 1,000 whispers. Couldn't move, couldn't speak. My body felt rooted to the ground as he stepped closer, his movements fluid and unnatural, like a puppet on invisible strings. "You can't run anymore," he continued, his grin never faltering. "You've seen too much. Now it's your turn." "My turn for what?" I finally managed to choke out. He didn't answer. Instead, he pointed toward the door of room 6. Inside, I saw them, the figures, the twisted versions of myself, standing in a perfect circle around the shattered mirror. And in the center of the mirror, the void pulsed, growing larger, brighter. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't obey. The ground beneath me felt like quicksand, pulling me toward the door. As I crossed the threshold, the figures turned in unison, their empty eyes locking onto mine. "Welcome home," they said in my voice, their tones hollow and lifeless. The void consumed me. When I woke up, I was in my car again, parked in front of my house. But something's wrong. The reflection in the rearview mirror isn't mine. It's him. He's smiling. And tonight, when I glanced at my bathroom mirror, the glass rippled, and I saw room 6 waiting for me. This time, I don't think I'll be able to leave, because I'm not sure there's anything left of me to leave. If you see the motel, keep driving. And whatever you do, don't look in the mirrors. I don't think I'm writing this for anyone but myself, to remind me of who I was, who I am, before I disappear completely. The changes started slow. First, it was little things. I'd catch myself saying something I didn't mean to say, words spilling out in a voice that didn't quite sound like mine. Or I'd find objects in my house that I didn't recognize. An old pair of boots, a half-empty pack of cigarettes, even though I don't smoke. Then it got worse. Last night, I woke up standing in front of the bathroom mirror. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed and panicked, but it wasn't moving. I tried to lift my hand, to touch the glass, but my reflection didn't follow. Instead, it smiled. And when I looked down, my hand wasn't touching the sink. It was gripping the mirror, fingers sinking into its surface like water. I pulled back with all my strength, stumbling into the wall behind me. The mirror rippled, then stilled, but my reflection stayed there, watching, its grin slowly fading. I don't think I'm in control anymore. This morning, I woke up to find my car parked in the driveway, but I don't remember driving it. The passenger seat was covered in dirt and leaves, like I'd been somewhere deep in the woods. There were scratches on my arms, claw marks that I can't explain. And the worst part? My phone had a new photo in its gallery. It was a picture of room 6. The door was open, and the man was standing there, his grin impossibly wide, holding up a sign that read, "Almost time. I've stopped going to work. Stopped talking to friends." Every time I try to call someone, the call drops, and the humming comes through the line instead. It's inside the house now. I can hear it behind the walls, in the pipes, in the air vents. At night, I see shadows moving in the corners of my vision, even when the lights are on. And the mirror isn't just in my bathroom anymore. There's one in the hallway now, and another in the living room. I didn't put them there. Every time I pass one, I see something different. Not just my reflection, other places. The parking lot, the motel hallway, even glimpses of other people. Last night, I saw a man standing in his kitchen, staring into a mirror that wasn't there before. He looked terrified. Then I realized he was staring at me. I don't think I'm the only one. The motel is spreading. The mirrors are like doorways, pulling people in one by one. I've seen them, the others who've been taken. They're in the mirrors now, their faces warped, their eyes hollow. Some of them scream, pounding on the glass, begging to be let out. But most of them just watch, their mouths twisted into the same grin as the man. I'm running out of time. The mirrors are everywhere now. I can't avoid them. I've covered them with sheets, broken some of them, but they keep coming back. And every time I sleep, I wake up closer to room 6. Last night, I woke up standing outside the motel. The neon sign buzzed overhead, and the door to room 6 was wide open. I didn't go inside. I ran back to my car, screaming, clawing at my own skin to wake myself up. But this morning, I found dirt under my nails, and in my pocket, a key. It's the key to room 6. I'm holding it now, and I can feel it vibrating, like it's alive. The humming is louder than ever, resonating through the walls, the floors, my chest. I think I know what I have to do. If you're reading this, remember my story. Tell someone. Burn every mirror you can, because the next time you look into one, you might see it. Room 6, waiting for you, and when it's your turn, don't open the door. I can't stop shaking. The key, it's burning a hole in my hand. I've tried to throw it away, bury it, even hurl it into the woods, but no matter what I do, it comes back. Every time I look down, it's there, gleaming faintly, taunting me. And I swear the number 6 etched into the brass is growing darker. Like the key is alive, feeding off my fear. I don't want to open the door. I can't. But I'm afraid it's not my choice anymore. Last night, I boarded up every mirror in my house, shoved furniture against the bathroom door, and sat in the corner of my room with every light on. It didn't help. The humming started around 3 a.m., a low, thrumming vibration that grew louder and louder until it felt like the walls themselves were alive, pulsing in time with the sound. Then the lights went out. I couldn't see anything, but I felt it. The air thickening, the temperature dropping. My breath came out in short, visible puffs, and then the whispers started. They weren't coming from outside the room this time. They were coming from inside me. You can't hide forever, the voices said, overlapping and distorted, like a choir of the damned. A sudden flash of light filled the room, and for a split second, I saw them. The figures from the mirrors, standing in a circle around me, their hollow eyes staring down, their mouths moving in silent chants. And then they were gone. When the lights came back on, the key was in my hand, glowing faintly. I've realized something. This key isn't just a way into room 6. It's a way out. Not for me, for them. The figures, the man, the things trapped in the mirrors, they need someone to open the door to let them escape. And if I don't, I think they'll find another way. I've been fighting it all day, trying to hold on to what little control I have left. But the motel is everywhere now. It's in my phone's reflection, in the blacked out windows of my car, in the polished surface of a spoon. Every reflective surface shows the same thing. Room 6, waiting for me. The humming never stops anymore. It's inside my head, in my bones, vibrating with an intensity that makes it impossible to think. I don't know how much longer I can resist. The key is glowing brighter now, pulsing like a heartbeat. I can feel it pulling me, dragging me toward the inevitable. I'm scared, but I can't run anymore. This is it. If anyone finds this, know that I tried. But room 6 always wins. The last thing I'll say, if you ever see the motel, don't stop. If you ever hear the humming, run. And if you ever find a key in your pocket, don't open the door. Static, you've reached room 6. Welcome. I'm writing this from inside room 6. The door closed behind me as soon as I stepped in, sealing me in this endless, suffocating void. It's not a room anymore. The walls stretch on forever, pulsating with that same sickly glow I've seen in the mirrors. And the whispers, they never stop. They're not just in my head anymore. They're everywhere, pressing against me, pulling at me. Each one speaks in a voice I almost recognize. A neighbor, a coworker, a childhood friend. All of them are gone now. Their words lost in the swirling, chaotic noise that fills this place. I'm alone, but I'm not. The man is here, watching me from the edge of the void. He doesn't speak, doesn't move, just stands there with that terrible grin stretched across his face. The figures are here too, circling me, their hollow eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. They don't speak either, but their presence is suffocating, their shadows stretching toward me like claws. I've tried to scream, but my voice doesn't work anymore. It doesn't matter. They're not here to hurt me. They're here to replace me. Every now and then, the void shifts, showing me glimpses of the world outside. I've seen my house, my car, even my friends, what's left of them. But the reflections don't match anymore. I saw myself sitting in my living room, drinking coffee, laughing at something on the TV. But it wasn't me. It was him, the man with the grin. He's wearing my face now, walking my life, erasing me piece by piece. I think I understand now. Room 6 isn't a place. It's a doorway, a gateway to something much bigger, much darker than I could have ever imagined. The man, the figures, the whispers, they're not just trapped here. They're part of it, part of whatever this place is. And now, so am I. The whispers are louder now, almost deafening. The figures are closer, their shadows wrapping around me like chains. I can feel myself slipping away, my thoughts unraveling, my memories fading into the void. I don't know how much longer I'll last, but if anyone finds this, please burn every mirror, smash every reflection, and whatever you do, don't open the door. But it wasn't the end. Not for me. When I thought the void would swallow me whole, something shifted. The man stepped forward, his grin wider than ever, his hollow eyes locking onto mine. Behind him, the figures stood still, their shadows pulsing in rhythm with the humming. The air grew heavy, pressing down on my chest until I thought I'd suffocate. Then he spoke. "You're not done yet," he said. His voice layered, distorted, impossibly ancient. "You opened the door. Now you must keep it open." Before I could respond, the ground beneath me cracked, splitting open into a chasm of blinding light. I felt myself falling, tumbling into the abyss, my screams lost in the roar of the void. When I landed, I wasn't in the motel anymore. I was back in my car. The engine was running, the headlights slicing through the darkness of an empty highway. My hands gripped the steering wheel, trembling as I tried to make sense of what had just happened. But it wasn't over. The radio crackled to life, the static warping into that familiar, haunting hum. And then, faintly, I heard his voice. "You're part of the story now. Pass it on." I don't know how long I drove or where I was going. The highway stretched endlessly, the night pressing in from all sides. But the signs were everywhere. Reflections in puddles that showed room 6 instead of the sky. Broken mirrors littering the roadside, their shards glinting like malevolent eyes. And then there were the others. I passed them on the road, cars with headlights that flickered erratically, drivers staring straight ahead with vacant, hollow eyes. I knew they'd been to the motel too, and now, like me, they were running. But running doesn't matter. The motel finds you no matter where you go. It's not just a place. It's a parasite, feeding on fear, on despair. And now I'm part of it. If you're reading this, you've already heard the humming. Maybe you caught it in the static of your TV, or in the faint buzz of a fluorescent light. Maybe you've seen the signs, the reflections that don't quite match, the figures at the edge of your vision. If that's the case, it's too late. The door is open now, and it's waiting for you. I don't know how much longer I can fight it. The man's voice is louder now, echoing in my head, telling me to pull over, to stop, to find someone else and pass the curse on. But I won't. Not yet. Because I know what happens when you open the door, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So if you see the Willow Creek Motel, keep driving, and whatever you do, don't look in the mirrors. I don't know how I got back to my house. One moment, I was on that endless highway. The neon glow of the motel burned into the horizon. The next, I was here, in my driveway, staring at the reflection of my face in the car's window. Only it wasn't my face. It smiled before I did, teeth too sharp, eyes too hollow. When I blinked, the reflection blinked late, just a beat behind me, enough to make my stomach twist. I stumbled out of the car, leaving the engine running, and bolted for the front door. Inside, everything looked normal. Too normal. The house was unnervingly quiet, like the space itself was holding its breath. I checked every room, flipped every light switch. Nothing out of place, until I reached the bathroom. The mirror was back. No sheets, no cracks, just a perfectly polished surface, reflecting the dim light of the bathroom. But the reflection wasn't mine. It was room 6. I saw the peeling wallpaper, the buzzing TV, the shadows that shouldn't have been there. And in the corner of the frame, barely visible, stood the man. He wasn't moving, just standing there, his grin stretched wider than ever, his pale face glowing faintly in the static of the screen behind him. And then he raised his hand. He waved. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the entire house felt like it shifted, like reality itself had bent. When the lights steadied, I wasn't alone anymore. The humming started, low and rhythmic, vibrating through the walls. I turned, and in the reflection of the mirror, the figures appeared. Dozens of them, twisted versions of me, their hollow eyes staring, their mouths moving in silent chants. The man stepped forward, his hand reaching out, his fingers pressing against the glass. And then the glass rippled. The figures moved in unison, their shadows stretching through the reflection, spilling out of the mirror and into the room. I backed away, tripping over the edge of the bathtub, my heart hammering in my chest. The shadows grew darker, denser, filling the space like smoke. The man's voice echoed through the air, layered and distorted. "You can't run," he said. "The door is open. It's always open." I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The shadows closed in, cold and suffocating, and the last thing I saw before everything went black was my own face in the mirror. It wasn't panicking. It wasn't afraid. It was smiling. When I woke up, I was lying on the floor of my bedroom. The mirror was gone, but the humming hasn't stopped. I don't know how long I've been here. Hours, maybe days. Time doesn't feel real anymore. I can feel them just outside my vision. Watching, waiting. The key is still in my pocket, its weight pulling me down, its surface warm to the touch. And I know what it wants me to do. The door to room 6 is still open, just waiting for me, and soon I won't have a choice. I don't know if this is real anymore. Every time I think I'm back, think I'm free, the motel finds me again. This time it wasn't the mirrors. It wasn't the humming. It was the key. I woke up clutching it in my hand, its surface cold and slick, even though I'd thrown it out of the car window hours ago. The number 6 was glowing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. And I could hear it now, not just in my head, but outside, in the real world. The faint hum vibrating through the walls, the air, even the ground beneath my feet. When I looked out the window, the motel was there. It didn't matter that I was hundreds of miles away. It didn't matter that I'd left the highway, that I'd smashed every mirror in my house. The Willow Creek Motel stood in the middle of my suburban street, its neon sign flickering in the night. My neighbors' houses were gone. My car gone. Everything was replaced by that sickly glow, that buzzing neon. And room 6, its door was open. I tried to fight it. I grabbed my phone, dialing the police, but the call wouldn't go through. The screen flickered, and for a brief moment, I saw the man grinning at me through the camera. The humming grew louder, pressing against my chest like a weight. I stumbled back, my knees hitting the floor as the key burned in my hand. I could feel it pulling me, dragging me toward the door, toward that cursed room. And then I heard a voice. "You can't stop this," it whispered, soft and cold, like a blade against my skin. I turned, and there he was. The man was standing in my living room, his pale face glowing in the dim light. He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with that impossible grin. "Why me?" I croaked, my voice barely audible over the hum. His grin widened. "Because you looked," he said. "I don't remember standing up. I don't remember walking toward the door. But now I'm outside. The motel towers over me, its walls stretching impossibly high, its windows dark and empty. The neon sign buzzes above, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. The key is warm in my hand now, pulsing in time with the humming. Room 6 is waiting, and I'm about to open the door. I stepped inside room 6. The door didn't creak. It didn't slam. It simply shut, sealing me inside with a